This week in CIST 1530, we'll look at Chapter 12, working with Camera Raw. In this lesson, we're going to look at how to open a Camera Raw image in Adobe Camera Raw, adjust the tone and color in a raw image, sharpen an image in Camera Raw, synchronize settings across multiple images, open Camera Raw image as a smart object in Photoshop, and also apply Camera Raw as a filter in Photoshop. So in this, we're going to get an understanding of Camera Raw and its relationship to Photoshop. We're also going to look at retouching the image more extensively in Photoshop. This is something that you can use this as an advanced hobbyist, or if you're a professional photographer working with Photoshop, and it's used to clean up digital images. So first, we're going to start with opening up an image. Because first, let's look at File, and we're going to browse in Bridge. Okay, so this will take us to where we have our starting document stored. Once Bridge is loaded, we will navigate to the Lesson 12 folder. I'm going to zoom in on the thumbnails when they are created. All right, so first thing we're going to look at, we're going to start off looking at the 12A underscore start and then the 12A underscore end, these two files here. So looking at these, we can compare the thumbnails of these. There are noticeable differences you can see in the screen from the start to the end. So we'll be working with these as we adjust the files in Photoshop. We'll see that we have some shots of a mission. And these are the files that we will use in here. So we're going to shift click these and select all of the images. If we go up to File, this is where we can open in Camera Raw. So we'll choose Open in Camera Raw. We can also use the keyboard shortcut of Control and R. So we'll open this and let this open. And 1 second as I try to drag this to the next screen. There we go. All right, so this is our Camera Raw dialog box. A couple things. When you first open this, you'll get a dialog box that'll open up. That'll walk you through some settings, some setting up of the Camera Raw. I'll give you a little tour of the Camera Raw dialog box. So let's look at a few of these settings here. So down here we'll have our film strip. Divider that we can use this to adjust their works canvas or our film strip. This is our film strip down here where we can look at the different files to click on these. We do have our zoom located down here where we can zoom in as far as our levels. Okay, we have a collapsible menu that are located over here with different options. We have our histogram. Up here we have an option to convert and save our image as, or selected images. This icon here is our Camera Raw preference settings. This will allow us to toggle the full screen for our window. This allows us to edit or create edit adjustments, image adjustments. We have a crop and rotate or spot removal. From here you have your local adjustments, such as adjustment brush, your gradient fill, radial filter. We have a red eye remover. Located here. The next one's going to be our snapshots and presets. And finally, we have more image settings that we can go into with this menu here. When we scroll down to the bottom, we have a zoom tool. We have our hand selection tool. You have our toggle sampler overlay. And finally, you have your grid overlay. We'll go back to this side, and we'll see here that we have our film strip menu. We can click to toggle these for different settings, different formats. We can set these for different filters, different sorting options. We can rate the image on stars, or we can also mark these for deletion. Over to the right, we do have a button here that lets us do before and after views. And the button here that's not is our toggle default settings. Then we have our options. Expand this. We have our options here for the open. We can cancel the option. We can open up files, and we can also mark something as done here as well. All right, so clicking on the thumbnails in our film strips will allow us to preview the image. Settings that we make changes to. For example, we're choosing this image here. We do have different profiles you can load. So the example you have in your textbook is add the landscape. You'll see how these are presets and how they will adjust the color and the histogram as they are loaded. You can go in and modify these as well. You can also set the white balance as well. And you have different options for these. So if we choose, say, cloudy, we can give the white balance more of a feel of it if it was a cloudy day, or if we had it shot in the shade, daylight. So you can see how the changes in these options change the way the image looks. Now you can also use the white balance tool, and you can choose options for your white balance. And you'll see as I use the tool, I can set the white balance based off these settings that I've chosen. You notice this one changes to custom. So if you want to go back to, say, cloudy, you can go back and reload that preset. You also have some auto buttons up here that you can use. If you want to make an image black and white, you can click the black and white and then make tonal adjustments. You can also choose auto, cut the black and white off. And so these are some auto settings that I can use, and then I can adjust those to make different settings. And I can come down, for example, in the exposure, I can either type in the value, or I can use the slider to adjust my settings. So if I want to put this, say, at plus 50%, highlights at, say, minus 20. So by making these changes, I can set up a new settings for this. Now I have multiple different options I've got that I can work with. I can do sharpening. So what sharpening does, it enhances the image details, the finest details of the image. So when I adjust the sharpening, you can see how the image becomes more vibrant, more sharp. So I'm increasing the sharpness of the image. You also see I've got other options I can go into even further and adjust these as well. So you have a lot of ways you can customize an image. I'm going to do something drastic and cut all these up. You can see how it affects the image. Now, if you need to apply these to multiple images, you can come down to your options. So I'm going to select all by holding my mouse pointer down. I'm going to select all. So now I have all the images selected. As you see, I have them individually. Choose select all. And then in here I can choose also to sync the settings. Okay, so this is the settings that I'm going to now choose to set. Drag this over the screen. So I've got the different settings here that I can choose to set. So in this case, I'm going to click OK. And now you see that all my images look like they were shot at the same time of day. Okay, so everything has been synced back to the settings I have. Now you can also use Camera Raw to click off this to save your images. So if you need to convert an image, so I can come up to and convert and save an image, which will bring up my save options. Okay, so first I can choose the destination, change the folder. I can change the file name for the image. The format, and I also can change the file extension. So I can choose what type of file I want to save this as. So if I want to save this as a Photoshop file, as a PSD file, I can do this in the Save As dialog box. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this. And when you cancel, you'll get the cancel all the changes. So I'm going to say yes, cancel all the changes. Close this out. So we'll move into these images here. I'm going to choose this image, and I'm going to go back to File and then Open in Camera Raw. Once again, I'll wait through it to go through the process to open the image. So as the white balance, I'm going to choose to set this to, say, one of the whites. So I'm adjusting the white balance for the image. So you see how it has changed. So based off my selection of the image, you'll see that these options here have changed. We'll look at levels. So we're going to move this over into Photoshop. So this is where you'll do the save options. You'll change this to a Photoshop file. And then here you will take it into and name it model underscore final.psd. Okay, I already have that file created in Photoshop. I am going to name mine model underscore working. Change the file format. Click save. Now, if I want to open this as an object in Photoshop, I can come down to this menu and choose Open as Object. And the image will be loaded into Adobe Photoshop as a smart object. We see here indicated by the icon in the thumbnail. Now, in this file, I'm going to go to my Adjustments panel, and I'm going to work with adding a level. Because the levels, it controls, it's going to control the light and dark values in an image. So as I adjust these images, so I'm increasing the lightness. And in this one, I want to increase the darkness. You can also type the values in here. Also in this, you can choose the individual colors. So if I want to adjust just the reds, I can adjust the image. You can also just drag the triangles, the sliders, to adjust the image as well. Or you can type in the values in the actual box. Next thing you will be doing is using the saturation. So I'm going to click on the Smart Object. This brings me back into the camera raw. So while I'm in edit mode, selected here, I'm going to choose the saturation. Minimize this. Go to my color mixer, and in here I'm going to adjust the saturation. All right, so this is where I can adjust the reds, the oranges, yellows, greens. Gives me a little bit more options on this. So I'm not adjusting these to the settings that you will. Once I'm finished adjusting, I'm going to click OK. It's going to load my image back into Photoshop. Once I click OK. Now, I can also use the healing brush to heal blemishes, maybe smooth the skin, remove red veins from the eyes, or even hide the nose jewelry that she has in her image. So I always recommend zoom in onto your image and then make a copy of your image. So I'm going to right click the image and choose to duplicate layer. And that's the layer I'm going to work on. Now, one thing I may want to do is I want to rasterize it. So I'm going to choose the layer. And in here, I'm going to come to Smart Objects. And I'm going to choose to rasterize. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm combining that smart layer in as this is now no longer a smart object, only a layer. So over in the tools, I'm going to use the spot healing brush. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong item. So you have all kinds of different options in the tools. You want to make sure you choose the Smart Healing Brush tool. Our settings, we're going to set this at 35 pixels. The mode set to normal, and the top to content aware. Now we're going to remove this object here, this nose jewelry, and simply by clicking on it, we have removed that image. And this is something the Smart Spot Healing Brush can be used for. For example, if you wanted to remove this freckle, okay, so we can use these to clean up blemishes on the image. Now we can also use tools like the dodge or the sponge tools. So let's say that we want to brighten up her lips and eyes. So I'm going to choose the right tool. So the first one I'm going to choose is the sponge tool. And up here I'm going to make sure that we have vibrance selected. Set my brush size to 35 pixels. The hardness to 0. The mode I'm going to put to saturate, so I'm adding more color in. And then the flow is set to 50%. Now, with this, on this case, I am going to work on these eyes. So I'm going to zoom in on her eyes, and I'm going to drag this across the irises of her eyes. To bring out her eyes a little bit more. I'm going to go back to fit this on the screen. So I made her eyes a little bit more vibrant. Now, you'll see that one thing I did do is when I clicked in the whites, that became more red. Okay, the reason I did this is so that when I go to desaturate, I can take that redness from that area. So I did that for a demonstration to make it a little bit more red. So I can remove the redness from her eye in the situation. Now, once again, using the same tool, the sponge tool, I can use this to increase the saturation of her lips. So I make sure that I have this set to saturate. Brush size is going to be set to 45. The hardness is going to be left alone. We're going to set the flow to 50%. Actually, we're going to change the brush size to 70. You see the lips are becoming more saturated. You do have to be careful about overdoing this. You can't add too much saturation to make it where it's more unrealistic. All right, so let's look at the dodge tool real quick. So the dodge tool, All right, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it over the eyes, the whites and the irises to brighten them. So I'm going to set this size to 60. Exposure I'm going to set to 10%. For the range, I'm going to choose the highlights. And from here, you see that when I use this on the eyes, how they become more bright. So this is one of the examples of how you could use the dodge tool and the brush tool, sponge tool, as well. You can also use Photoshop to adjust the skin tones of the image. If you go to select and choose color range, you're going to have your color range dialog box. And from in here, you do have some different options. So I'm going to choose skin tones. So we see that we have her skin tone selected. I want to make sure that I click deselect faces. I'm going to decrease the fuzziness to 10. We're making our selection based off the color range. And we'll click OK. So this is the area we have selected. So the adjustment is going to add a curve. So it's to the area selected. It has been created as a layer mask. So the only area that's going to be affected by this curve is the area that I have selected. And once again, I can adjust the reds, greens, blues from this image as well. So I want to make sure that I've got the layer visibility turned on. I'll adjust the input. For the image. Expand this. So the input, I'm going to adjust to 129, and the output from 119. And then I'm going to redock my panel. So I've adjusted the curves, adjusted the layers, the levels. I've adjusted her eyes with the tools. I've adjusted the lips with the sponge tools, dodge tool. I'm going to apply a surface blur. So once again, I'm going to make another duplicate. And on this layer, I'm going to now go to Filter, Blur, and then choose Surface Blur. Okay, so the radius I'm going to leave at 5 pixels, and I'm going to set the threshold at 10, and click OK. So not a lot of change there. I'm just adding a little bit of surface blur. Take out a little bit of the glassy look. As you can see here, when I change the opacity of this, it finishes to 40%. From where we started to the ending option here. Now you can use the eraser tool to more specifically target with your surface blur using this image that we've chosen. So if I use the eraser tool, I'm going to choose a brush size of about 40. I'll leave the hardness at 10%. Set the opacity at 90. I'm going to zoom in. Working on the layer I just applied the blur to. When I erase this, you see the difference in the eyes. From our starting document to where we're currently at. So it's going to get us to the end of chapter 12.